All right, hello. Let's hope this works here in a second. Um, hello. We're gonna try a stream. I have done no homework. I have not prepped this at all. It is probably not going to stay on my channel. It's probably not going to last. We're gonna talk about Half-Life 2. It's been kind of a big topic of discussion today on its 20th birthday. And I get up on these days. I don't want to give you like my whole life story right now, but I am waking up very, very early in the morning these days. And I'm pretty tired. It's not really something that I can do, or like I'm not going to be able to recount a lot of memories very easily because I have a very early morning schedule these days. But we're going to do our best. We're going to talk about Half-Life 2 for a little bit. We're going to talk about some mods. And I'm going to try and I'll probably talk a little bit about my personal history, but I'm probably going to talk a little bit about just mods in general, because I think that was the big thing about Half-Life 2 mods in those days, was the fact that you knew, or just, you bought Half-Life 2 knowing that the mod scene would follow, basically. And I knew this as a 13 and 14 and 15-year-old kid, right? So that's why it's like, I think we can shut down a lot of people that talk nonsense about Half-Life 2 right there, because it's like, think of all the mods we had, and like, this was back in the days before Steam. I mean, God, how many people here are old enough to remember when Garry's mod was on FileFront? Like, does anybody even remember that at all? So I guess we could really start and talk about Garry's mod. Garry's mod's obviously a mod that came from Half-Life 2 because Garry was one of the many people that realized like people just like playing around with the physics engine of the source engine, right? I mean, you can talk about Doom 3 all you want, and you can talk about other mods all you want, but I mean, for some reason, I guess like all those little touches to Half-Life 2 meant more than it did to other games. I mean, okay, so I can just tell you like more of a backstory of when I was a little kid, 12, 13 years old. Like say, when did I first play Half-Life 1? Would have been 2001 or something. I was 11, or I don't know. But my point is, like, you knew at a very early age, or at least like the early 2000s, you knew the Half-Life modding scene was not like top 5. It was not top 3. It was number 1. It was the best. Like, you knew that back in those days. So obviously when Half-Life 2 came out, there was like very high expectations for like that modding scene to continue, and it did. I don't know, I can't remember, like some of these people who are old like me might be able to remember if like they released like the Hammer editor and the Source SDK like early on or something like that, because I don't remember. I just remember playing the Counter-Strike Source beta for like months before Half-Life 2 came out, because I didn't have the game, and I didn't have Half-Life 2 until Christmas that year, which is only like a month and a couple weeks later, so no big deal. But obviously they had the demos and the betas out before then, and the Half-Life 2 beta was just Ravenholm, and the Counter-Strike Source beta was, if I remember right, it was Aztec and Dust 1. I think it was Aztec and Dust 1. Those were the only 2 maps you could play, but you could still, like, even then, I remember when the Counter-Strike Source beta first came out, there were all these forums posting about like console commands you could use to test out the source engine, like this is how you change the physics, like stuff like that, or just console commands that were new to the source engine that were maybe not new to Gold Source. So Counter-Strike Source is a big thing, and we could do like a whole stream. I'm not an expert on this subject, but you could do a whole stream talking about Counter-Strike Source and how Counter-Strike Source went downhill from a patch that got released at some point down the line. Don't tell me a year, because I'm not going to know what that year was. But at some point, Counter-Strike Source released a patch that turned everybody off from Counter-Strike Source. Maybe somebody in this chat knows what I'm talking about. Probably not. But Counter-Strike Source was a big deal at first. I think all the 1.6 people were on board. And that's kind of how a lot of us got an introduction to the Source engine, because I think we got the Counter-Strike Source beta before we got the Half-Life 2 demo. And this is when Steam was literally just Half-Life in Half-Life mods, and it was that pale green color. Nothing about Steam was what it's like now. Like Steam was in its prehistoric days. I'm sure you've all seen screenshots of it if you're like really young, but like that was back in the day when it was just like Half-Life 2 and all of the things associated with those two games. So I don't know, if we're going to talk about Half-Life 2 mods, I guess we're going to get started. There's a lot. And I probably don't even really want to go down the list, except maybe to go over the obvious ones, because what's the point of talking about like some obscure mod that only 5 people watching this are going to know what I'm talking about, right? So I don't know if we're really going to do this part of it, but oh boy, I can't even read my chat, folks. What the heck's going on with chat? Well, I just don't have a chat. That's why. I'm not reading my chat because nobody is chatting me. So my phone's dying. I don't even really know if I want to do this stream, but I say, how about we'll just start in chat? Somebody tell me like their favorite Half-Life 2 mods. Talk about Half-Life 2. I mean, maybe you're gonna say Synergy. Maybe you're gonna say Insurgency. I'm gonna just name some mods off the top of my head. You're gonna name Fistful of Frags. You're gonna name Counter-Strike Source. Jesus Christ, that's why I kind of wanted to do this mod, because I want to see if you guys can name some mods that I can't remember. Or I'm not gonna sit here and Google things just to try and like relive those days. But I mean, gosh, because like I think this begs the question, and if we're going to keep this like a short stream, I guess this is what I want to end it on. It's like, what was the best Half-Life 2 mod? I think it might be pretty easy. I mean, if you really wanted to be obvious and say like what the best Half-Life 1 mod was, it was Counter-Strike. But what was the best Half-Life 2 mod? I don't even know if it was Counter-Strike Source. It definitely wasn't Day of Defeat Source. What was the best Half-Life 2 mod? I mean, there were so many, because with Half-Life 2, you had the entire Source engine. And so it's like, you almost have to credit the Source engine with the Half-Life 2 game. Like they're kind of inseparable from each other, because like, you know, people will say like Half-Life is a remake, or Half-Life was because of Quake. Like people like Half-Life was just another game, you know, it was like advancement of the Quake engine. And there are so many games that were an advancement of like the Quake 3 engine. Like I used to play Jedi Knight 2, Jedi Outcast, which was from that engine. And there are so many other games that use the Quake engine. But then, you know, once the Source engine came out, there were so many games that used that engine, and it's just kind of like this never-ending cycle. So it's so hard to like pick like what is the most important thing to come out of Half-Life 2. And I guess if you had to pick one thing, it would be Garry's mod. I think Garry's mod is clearly like the most important Half-Life 2 mod of all time, because how many that mod has basically been out for 20 years, and there are still people who are discovering it for the first time. And I think they're still kind of like how you and I were when we first discovered Garry's mod. They also kind of see Garry's mod in the same way, because it really is kind of like a Source engine take on like a sandbox game. If we're going to talk about any Half-Life 2 mods that are just like incredible, amazing, without a doubt, like one of the best stories, it's got to be Garry's mod. I mean, Garry Newman was just this, I don't know anything about his backstory, but he's just this guy from England. And obviously after he made Garry's mod and after he made Rust, he's a very, very wealthy and successful and forever important kind of guy. So I think if we're going to talk about Half-Life 2 mods at all, we got to talk about Garry Newman. And gosh, you know, a lot of the young people today don't even remember what it was like to download and update mods before Steam implemented that themselves. Like you had to literally go on FileFront constantly and check to see, did my favorite mod like Garry's mod get updated today? Because if it did, I have to download it now, because all of the servers are already updated and way ahead of me, and I won't be able to play on any of these servers until I'm updated. And it was a huge mess at the time, and that is why Steam eventually put Garry's mod on their own platform. And it'd be interesting, I don't know if anybody here remembers like how much Garry got paid for that, but obviously probably pretty well, right? Especially since he made Rust and stuff like that going forward. But you know, it's just crazy to think that we were at a time in like 2005 where you had to check a website every day to see if you had the latest version of a Half-Life 2 mod. But people back then were so loyal and so passionate about the game and these mods that they would do it anyways. Like, you wouldn't even have to tell them to go and update it. They would just do it for you. And of course, now we have Steam that just updates automatically for you anyways. So, I mean, like, I know, like, gosh, I can think of random mod names that I don't even remember what they are, like Eternal Silence. There's other ones like that like I remember the name, but I remember nothing else about it. But like, just think of, go on ModDB right now and go like under Half-Life 2 mods, and how many there's got to be hundreds. I know a lot of them are jokes. I know some of them are very insignificant, and a lot of it's like shit posting and like little kids posting their first mod, and oh, that's so cute. But like, if you go on ModDB under like the Half-Life 2 mod section, I'm sure there's literally hundreds, if not thousands, of Half-Life 2 mods. And that the mod scene that came along with it, you're considering like the fan base that knew like, okay, this is something special. And everybody knew, despite like the beta leaks, despite like all this other nonsense that was going on at the time of Half-Life 2 coming out, you knew something very special was going on. So I can't stand to see all these little kids today playing Half-Life 2 for the first time, complaining like, what's so great about this, without taking into context the time period that was created, and like just how fresh of the episodes that came after Half-Life 2. We had the mods that came after Half-Life 2. We had CSGO, we had all Team Fortress 2, which, that's the Source engine too. You name, Day Defeat Source, which wasn't anything much, but, there was still something for those. Think of how much fucking time they spent on those Team Fortress 2 videos that were on the Valve channel. Like, those were top of the line. Like, you should be like, don't complain about Team Fortress 2 being dead now, because Valve did more than you could ever possibly dream of for that fucking game, right? So don't complain about Valve. Oh man, Team Fortress 2 is dead. What are they gonna do? Like, look, go on NoClip's channel or the Valve channel, and they did a I haven't watched it yet, but there's that 20 anniversary Half-Life 2 video on there. Like, at least they're doing this fucking shit. What, is it really gonna like make you that much happier if they make Half-Life 2 Episode 3? I doubt it. Like, and from what I understand, because my buddy told me this about the documentary on the Valve channel, which you should go watch, by the way, about Half-Life 2 and the 20th anniversary. At the end, they give some closure to why Half-Life 2 Episode 3 never happened. And, it has nothing to do with like the mods or the modding scene, which I know that all that did was drive players to the game. So like, from what I understand, Valve was totally open to the idea of people making mods and people making videos of their games, because it drew more traffic to Steam and their games. So they were totally on board. I think they were very ahead of their time. Half-Life 2, considering it was November 2004, was very ahead of his time. And it's got to be in one of the greatest games ever made. I don't know. It's hard to kind of like, we're not here to compare Half-Life 1 and Half-Life 2. I think that's stupid. Gold Source obviously had their very fluid mechanics, and Source was a little bit clunky at times. But at the end of the day, if you're fans of the franchise, if you're fans of the series, who cares? I think we're all very thankful for what we got. There's a whole wealth of memories, a whole wealth of games and mods that we got from just Half-Life 1 and Half-Life 2. And I think we should all be very thankful for that. And I know I got to be thankful for my parents who bought me Half-Life 2 on Christmas, because think of how much that changed my life and changed your life, when you got Half-Life 2, so it just think about that and you'll understand why people say it's one of the greatest games of all time. Good night, everybody. Have a good weekend. Don't do anything fucking retarded. Don't be a faggot. Good night.